my traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies. I am Allison. Welcome to or back to the channel where we talk about books, spirituality, magic, the paranormal, and cats. Though mainly I talk about books. I'm hoping to incorporate more of that other stuff as we keep going along, but I read way more than I'm doing the other stuff. Today we are dealing with an enormous flop and disappointment, which is Vibrate Higher Daily, Live Your Power by Lala Delia. And before I get into why this book sucks, and you absolutely do not buy this book. I rarely say that. I rarely say it, and I am especially grieved to say that for this book, which I'll say why in a second. This book was not worth the money that I spent on it, but I want to address something. This cover is what Harper One thought would sell this book. The reason why I bought this book is because when I am not reading books like this, which are very good and interesting, but you know, it's a lot, and sometimes I want to come up for air. I like to read like the vibe books, the new age books, the new thought books, as long as they're not like completely horrible and promoting things like conspiracies and starseeds and being completely like ableist and classist and disgusting, which a lot of the times they are. But we'll get to that later. The only reason why I picked this book up was because it's pink. It's pink, essentially, and it said Vibrate on it. I was just like, ooh, it's a vibes book. This is probably gonna be a light little, like, fun, like, this will probably be a mood, and maybe I'll get some, like, little beneficial tips and techniques for managing my own moods day to day, because, you know, I always enjoy a new perspective on that. Whenever someone's offering that in like a light, fun little book, I like to read it because you know what? Grimoires really don't offer that. You know, you're not reading the Ars Notoria to manage your mood better. That is why I bought this book, because as you can see, this cover is trash. And interestingly, they thought this would sell more than this would sell. This is the author. This is Lala. She looks very beautiful, even though she's doing one of those like, oh, I'm very spiritual. I'm extremely spiritual. Like that's the pose that's on all of like the self-help, like new agey books when there's a person on the cover. It's just like, oh. Like this slightly distressed look is my spiritual look. But they thought that putting her on the cover of her own book, like with the title, that wouldn't sell. However, HarperCollins thought this would sell, but not this. Hay House, though, figured this would sell the cover. This would sell this book. I wonder what the difference is. What's the difference? I can't tell. But for whatever weird reason, Gabby Bernstein is on the cover of her vibey book, but Lala isn't. Oh my gosh, how strange is that? And certainly not indicative of any type of ongoing long-term systemic issues within the publishing industry. Not the publishing industry. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, you know, that's why I am loath to say don't buy this book, because when I picked up this book, I had no idea that it was written by a woman of color. These like vibe-based, like new thoughty, new agey books, there are not a lot of very visible people of color in that space. And so it's like, when there is, it's like, oh shit, like, you know, let me support this. So I want to practice what I preach, essentially. And it's just like, I can't lie about it. I would say the only reason to purchase this book is to get more people of color in that predominantly white and white passing space. Unfortunately, this book is garbage. It says nothing. This is a very light book. This book is actually better than this book. This has like more actionable items in it and things that could actually help you, even though there's a lot to critique in it and a ton to critique about Gabby Bernstein. I am just talking about the book in isolation at the moment. If I was going to direct you to one, I would actually direct you to this one before I ever sent you here, because there is just nothing in this whole book. These things that I've marked are things that I just thought were trash. So let's see what I thought was trash. Most of the advice in this book is chalked up to just vibrate higher. Like literally. There are no real instructions or explanations for what she means by vibe higher. She's just saying you're a vibrational being, and when you encounter this, just vibe higher. Remember your high vibe. Just vibe higher. And it's like, okay, girl, give us the step-by-step, give us the breakdown. How are you doing that? Like what's going on here? And I am going to read to you this first passage that I marked on why it might be a little bit easier when Lala encounters a problem, why she might find it more effective to just go vibe higher than you might. She is in this passage dealing with a lot of grief from the passing of her mother, who she had a very complicated relationship with. And on top of dealing with this grief, she actually had to write this book. She had to get the book done, and she was trying to figure out how to do that. So this is the solution that she came up with. Asia offered me their dreamy home in the beautiful Southern California hills as a place of refuge. They invited me to stay there, offering to cook and care for me while I wrote this book. Come in right here, they said. You can sit among the trees, flowers, canyons. Stay as long as you need to. Just vibe higher! Do you have friends who live in the gorgeous Southern California, wherever among the trees, canyons, and flowers, and they are going to provide all for you expense-free so you can have a safe place to deal with your trauma and just focus on writing your book? Oh, I'm sorry, is that not something that is accessible for you? Just vibe higher. So you know what? I can kind of understand why maybe she can just vibe, right? Like, I could just vibe too, like shit. If I had friends that were just like, come and stay amongst the canyons and the birdies and the little creatures of the forest and don't do anything but like lounge, and we will feed you from our own mouths, and you can just like pin your worthless book, stay for as long as you like. Expense free. That's the solution here, is be wealthy or know wealthy people. And here's the thing, I wouldn't even begrudge someone that, but the book shouldn't start as vibe higher. The book should start as, and to her credit, she does at least talk briefly about how she grew up in poverty and trauma. She described some of that in a little bit of detail, but then it's sort of like she addresses that she had trauma patterns to work through, at least some emotional issues that were unmanageable for her. But the way that that is addressed is that she ran into a mentor in Whole Foods, and then that's just done. She doesn't ever talk about how she went from this like ground zero place, how she practically worked herself out of that emotionally, and if that is through therapy and all that, that's fine, but just address it in the book, because she doesn't. And the thing is, there is a whiff of like anti-vax, like anti-medication, anti establishment health systems, which I agree, there is a lot to critique. However, essential oils are not going to get you out of depression and trauma. Neither will crystals, okay? We can't all just go out amongst the canyons and float around in whatever pools in Sedona and have that take care of what we need. She never addresses what she did in that way, and she never addresses the nitty-gritty of how she worked from poverty to wealth. How specifically did your social circle change? What specifically did you do to network? What specifically did you do to grow your finance, to become better at business? It's never addressed. It's just vibe higher. And that is awful. That is not actionable. That is not advice, and it's the entire book. And like, I can't believe someone spent so long writing something that has absolutely no deep thought within it at all. At all. The advice that she gives when you're like going through something stressful, she's like, you need to take a pause and you need to harmonize, because you know that works with like vibration and vibe, right? Harmonize. This is the advice that she is giving, the explanation she is giving of what harmonizing is and how you can practically do it. So, harmonize. When you don't feel like yourself or you become overwhelmed by the journey, harmonize. This form of vibrational work is how you take your power back. It's stopping to put yourself back together. It's the gathering of yourself, your life, and your energy. It's finding a resting place, you know, like that place in Southern California that was just available to her. It's restoring your inner light. It's reclaiming your way. It's celebrating or mourning what you need to do. It's releasing what doesn't belong to you and shedding what doesn't serve you. It's discharging and recharging. It helps nurture you into your wholeness. It's sacred space you enter into and don't leave until you're fortified, vibrating higher, and feeling like yourself again. That's not a solution, it's not an explanation, and it is no practical advice whatsoever. So essentially, harmonizing is taking a step back. That's what could be written there. Take a step back. And here's the thing, how does someone do that? Which she has the experience. She has the experience from within poverty and trauma. How were you specifically doing that in that state? How were you using these tools to bring you from where you were to where you are? Harmonize, nurture, sacred space, vibration, soul work. It's like every single buzzword in every single paragraph and nothing actually nourishing. There's a lot of demonization of food. She doesn't go as far, I don't think, as saying like clean, well, it's low vibrational food, right? Low vibrational food. I will concede that there is food that contains more nutritional benefits than other forms of food. That does not mean that that food is low vibrational. Because I mean, seriously, it's super classist to be like, oh, those pores and their low vibrational McDonald's. What is someone supposed to do when they have no access to any of that? Again, how did you leave those spaces? The answer is money. The answer is money and opportunity. How did you make your money? How did you get access? That's the question. And it's not answered. I promise you, you do not need to be living a raw vegan lifestyle to be more spiritual, more high vibrational. You can be plenty high vibrational and be eating like a less nutritional diet. You just can. It's not dependent on that. Being high vibrational is not dependent on that, but I would say that there comes a point that if you do have access, it's something that you can layer on top of the things that you're already doing. Your vibe, while it is affected, I agree, by the things that you are consuming all around, and she does address that. The content that you're consuming, everything that you are taking in does affect you. But that doesn't mean that you can't be spiritual or high vibe and like never watch a horror movie. So while I totally hated this book and wasted my money on it, I did think that there were some good things. She does talk about systemic issues in this book. And she does talk about how it's unethical, wrong, and inhumane, and that part of our work needs to be resolving these things to the best of our ability, doing what we can, volunteering, not forgetting about it, and not think we're like manifesting it out of our life if we're not paying attention to it. So I appreciated that very much. I also appreciated that she mentioned that one of the maladaptive things she was doing was when she would get into a certain place with herself or with another person, she would find herself trying to fix something. Like, fix the problem, fix this, fix myself. And that's really, it's understandable, but that type of attitude is actually going to make things like worse for yourself. There is nothing to fix. There's just stuff to process and integrate and feel. So anyway, I have nothing of great significance to say about Vibrate Higher Daily other than it will not teach you how to do that. This book did not have to exist. Trees were killed for this. Trees were killed. Advances were paid, not thought-provoking, not actionable, no new perspectives, buzzword-filled platitudes of people who are dealing with a certain class of wealth that most of us are not dealing with, and no advice, no practical advice, no acknowledgement, nothing in general for how you could potentially get there yourself. You never see that in one of these books. You never see, I married wealthy, and with that privilege, I had the time to write my books, run my own business, network, do this, because all of that costs money. All of that costs money, so I want to know where the initial bankroll came from. Alignment is not enough. It is not enough. Prayer is not enough. There are practical things that you need to do in order to create wealth for yourself unless you are inheriting it, have inherited it, or have married into it. And that's that. Anyone who's not acknowledging that, it's a lie of omission. A rarity. Maybe might be the only time that I say this on this channel. Do not buy that book unless you specifically want to support a woman of color in that space. But if you buy it, just display it somewhere. Don't bother reading it because there's nothing in it worth reading.